Employers slash hiring manager slash HR people of Reddit, has anyone ever given you a reference that ended up costing them the job? If so, what happened? I used to work in a nursing home. We briefly employed a young girl, about 18 years old, who was useless. She would wander around the place with no shoes on. She would shower one resident in the time it took other carers to shower 5. When an old lady fell over in front of her, happens all the time. Old ladies are not known for their ability to remain upright. She actually ran away screaming with her hands in the air, leaving the old lady on the floor. Then she went and had an extended cigarette break to calm her nerves. She did not pass her probation. For some reason, another staff member, who had the same position as this girl, was not HR supervisor in any way, gave this girl a glowing reference that got her a job at a different nursing home. She did about as well there as she did with us. Not long after, the lady who gave the reference applied at the other home. They actually laughed at her and told her there was no way they were giving her a job after she sent them that girl. Not me, but the best story I have heard. I was working at a law firm and I found out that my boss's boss, financial officer, had applied for the job above him, operating officer, at the firm. He was the only candidate and was in the final references review and gave out someone's name. During the reference call, the guy actually convinced the firm that he was better for the job than the candidate and ended up getting the operation officer job over him and then hired him as his subordinate, financial officer. I can't believe the guy actually took the job after that. I was the reference that cost someone a job. This dumbass was my roommate's boyfriend. I hired him on at my shop because he needed some extra cash. He barely worked for the 2 months he worked for me. Like most of our lazy employees, we just phased him out rather than fire him. Anyway, he applied for a job in his field at a petroleum engineering company or something. It was a management position and he needed management experience. He put himself down as my supervisor. Well, they called me because they wanted to know what it was like being managed by him. I thought it was a mix-up, and they said no, he put himself down as the manager of the shop. Yeah, no. I told them that was a straight up lie. He didn't get the job. Our person here. In a past job, I did a lot checking references. Called a reference for someone who was starting in a week or so. First employer is small company. Person who answers the phone tells me they want me to talk to the owner. When I say the former employee's name, owner comes on and is super friendly. I tell her the former employee and that I just need a quick reference. She tells me I wish good things for all the people who've ever worked for me. I do not wish good things for her. Of course I ask why, and she tells me a whole list of issues, including her walking out in the middle of conversations to go smoke, never showing up to work on time, and on the day she did show up on time, she would ask to leave early. She goes on for about 5 minutes on all the reasons she was fired from the job. At some point, it's too much, and I stop taking notes. At this point in my career, I've never gotten more than a generic, yes they worked here for $X/HOUR, and that's all I can say. So I ask my manager how to handle this. She tells me try calling 2 more of the references and see what they say. Call a lawyer's office who had hired her a temp/contract employee for 3 months. They told me they asked her to leave 1.5 months in because the head lawyer said he couldn't deal with her anymore. She couldn't even finish out the contract. Same basic issues as the first reference. Call the final one. It was a franchise of a chain and the franchise had closed, so dead end. Call corporate and they can't verify because it was a franchised location. My manager calls the candidate and tells her that she needs to give us something else to go off for reference, since we've gotten not so good ones so far. She cannot give us anything, and the ones we had were awful, so we decide not to hire. I've been involved in the hiring of hundreds of employees and this was the only time I've ever had someone give an honest reference, and I was so glad we sidestepped that minefield. I had an employee that I fired use me as a reference. The hour group that called asked about specific things on his resume. He put down stuff that even I, as his boss, didn't do. He apparently managed an $8 million department. I manage a $2 million department. He managed 0 of that. He was responsible for 8 employees. I had 6 at the time, including him. He had 0 reports. He was in charge of safety for our 500-person plant. We have a team of 4 full-time safety employees. I'm not one. I told them why I fired him. He was a chemist, verified his degree in chemistry. He mixed ammonia and bleach to clean his workstation. He did not get the job. I called this girl's reference and left a message. The lady called me back immediately, asking I wanted a what for who. Now, when I finally explained it to her, she tells me that the girl had worked for her as the only other employee in her doggy daycare, then stopped showing up to work, stole a bunch of money and supplies, and tried to report the lady to a licensing board for God knows what, which was dismissed. She couldn't believe the girl actually listed her as a reference. Guess she was gambling that I wouldn't call. Not quite what you are asking for, but my ex-coworker asked me to be a reference. I said it probably wasn't the best idea, because I wouldn't lie for her. She used me anyway, so when the new potential employer called me, I told them that she was late a lot, sick a lot, didn't contribute a lot, and had a personality that made people want to hit her. I'm pretty sure she didn't get that job. I thought I was going to be the reference that cost someone a job. I used to work at a fast food place that almost nobody ever got fired from. But there was one manager who got fired for drinking on the job, looking at porn in the office instead of making food, and basically being a colossal screw up. A few weeks later I got a call from a retail store asking about him. He put us down as a reference after all that. I couldn't disguise my shock and said he put this job on his work history. Then I said he was not eligible for a hire, but I couldn't give any details. They hired him anyway. I heard from someone who worked there that he stole a bunch of shit from them and they fired him within 6 weeks. I didn't feel too bad for them. They should have known better when even the stoner-staffed fast food joint wouldn't give a good reference. I gave a reference that cost someone a job. A coworker asked if I would be her character reference, to which I agreed. She was fired from a writing job at a small newspaper. I genuinely liked her and liked working with her. However, she left us in the lurch 30 minutes before her deadline and a couple hours before the paper's deadline, which left us scrambling to fill space. Deadlines gave her anxiety, yet we only had 3/week. I knew I would be called as a character reference, but was unpleasantly surprised when I got questions directly pertaining to her job performance. I told the guy exactly what she did and what it did to the rest of us. He was shocked, then asked if there was anything else he needed to know. I told him that he's hiring for a daily newspaper and what I just told him ought to be all he needed to know. I had the opportunity to, but I declined. I was worried the guy was going to sue me. He was extremely paranoid when he worked for me. I coached him into doing his job better, but he quit unexpectedly. He left a 13-page Unabomber-style manifesto with both ours and my boss about how terrible I was, and how I was an arrogant narcissistic asshole, and how he was the only person on my team who did any work. 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I'll let it go to voicemail, since I was busy. Same number called 7 more times that hour, before I finally picked it up, to find out what was so fucking urgent. Turned out it was manifesto guy asking for a reference. Not touching that one. Told him to contact ours. I also was the reference that cost someone a job. I was doing research in a cloud forest in Ecuador. This 19-year-old man was brought in as my assistant. He flat out lied on his CV and had no experience in mountain climbing or as a research assistant. Now life in the cloud forest is brutal. 4,000 meters above sea level, so O2 concentration is halved, vertical cliff faces, 12 to 14 hours of rain daily and you are isolated 6 hours away from a road suitable for a car. In other words, you need to be fucking trained and tough to live here for months on end. He was a liability that legitimately nearly got me killed due to him not bringing emergency food, first aid kit, or GPS because his pack was too heavy. He then did not follow safety protocol and varied off the designated path and got lost. I spent 5 hours finding his ass, pulling him out of the hole he found himself in, and then had to carry him back down the mountain as he injured his leg. To top it off, I had to do it blind as the sun had set halfway to camp, and he had broken my headlamp. When I eventually got him to safety and to a hospital, he tried to tell my higher ups that I got us lost and he got injured as a result. That quickly got found out as untrue. That dumb motherfucker then put me down as a reference. Oh, I enjoyed talking to his potential boss. It didn't cost him the job, though he still did not get it, but it was kind of a weird story. It happened this past summer. I was hiring for a warehouse worker position and was responsible for checking references. We had this one guy had a 3-year gap in employment. Normally this isn't really a big deal, as long as you have a good excuse. School, sick, taking care of someone is usually valid ones. He said he took a sabbatical to deal with the untimely death of his parents. So we called one reference. It was his former boss at a gas station he worked at in Utah. Guy answers the phone and tells me that he has been missing for 3 years after he and his parents got into a car crash and the parents died. According to the police, he left the scene, was not driving from what they could tell, and walked into the forest. So I called the guy back in, having notified the police who were sending people down to talk to him. I talked to him for a good while about the incident. He went into shock and left. By the time he realized what had really happened, he was on the run for like a week and didn't think he should go back. Dude spent 3 years living off stolen food, money, under the table jobs, and living in a tent and cars. Finally moved out here thinking he could apply for a job without anyone asking questions. He used an old resume he had on Google Drive and didn't realize it had the reference. He went back, I think served some time for running away, but was forgiven, and last I checked up on him on FB, I stalk from time to time. He's back in Utah working at a landscaping company.